Well, folks, here's my new backyard. Hay shed. Can't even see the house because of all the trees.
And I am back for another new video with my mom.
Hi.
In 2017, the main and really only suspect of a heartless and horrific crime disappeared. And to this day, despite leaving behind a trail of clues, they have never been captured. On June 19, 2017, the police arrived at a picturesque farm property in Idaho to perform a welfare check on its new residents, a 60-year-old man, his 47-year-old girlfriend, and their teenage daughter. They had just moved into the house, but no one had heard from them for several days. Something just wasn't right. When the first officer arrives at the farm, he is immediately hit by a smell that stops him cold in his tracks. He knows exactly what it is before he takes another step, the smell of something rotting. There's a shed near the house, and that's where the odor seems to be coming from. So he calls for backup on the radio and begins to approach to investigate. The closer he gets, the stronger the smell becomes, and the number of flies surrounding him increases immensely. He can feel in his stomach that he is about to discover something he doesn't want to see. But he proceeds anyway. When he finally opens the door to the shed, the sunlight shines through the crack and enters the small storage area before him. There on the floor is a bright blue tarp, and it is covering something, or rather someone. As he pulls the tarp, he slowly reveals the bodies of 3 people lying side by side, all of whom have been brutally killed and left to rot in the shed, probably for days. As it is essentially the peak of summer, the weather has substantially accelerated the decomposition process. It's hard for anyone to determine who the deceased individuals are, although it's not hard for friends and family to assume that the owner, Mike, his girlfriend, Nadja, and their daughter, Payton, are the bodies on their property. As the authorities managed to identify the bodies, they came across a shocking twist that no one ever expected. While 2 of the bodies actually belonged to the trio who occupied the house, one of them did not belong, which left everyone with 2 anguishing questions. Who was this mysterious stranger killed on someone else's property, and perhaps even more chilling, where in the world was the 3rd missing resident? As the pieces of the puzzle of this complicated case began to fit together, the loved ones of the victims came to a chilling conclusion. No matter how much you think you know your friends, you can never be sure what double lives they might be living. When Nadja Medley was in her 40s, her 13-year-old daughter, Payton, was her whole life. But the single mother often struggled to get by after her husband passed away in 2014. She also unfortunately lost a child shortly after his birth around the same time. For a while, Nadja and Payton were basically all they had in the world. But that was about to change. Nadja worked as a massage therapist in Ogden, Utah, and was in no hurry to find love again so soon after becoming a widow. In 2015, a man walked into Nadja's work needing a massage. The man, who went by the name of Mike, was undeniably impressive to Nadja. Almost immediately, there was a connection that neither of them seemed able to control. Their relationship started slowly, although it became more serious as the months went by. From dates after work to hikes with Nadja and Payton, Mike demonstrated his commitment to this new love. After all, he knew how much Nadja had already suffered. He made his girlfriend's daughter a priority in his life, picking up Payton from school, taking her out for lunch, teaching her to shoot, and building such a strong bond with her that in no time she began to call him Dad.
There you go. Awesome. Do it again. Keep pointing that way. Do it again.
Looking at their videos adventuring and even having fun wrestling in the foliage, you can tell that Mike not only became a father figure in Payton's life, but they also became best friends. Nadja's friends saw a dramatic change in the woman when she met Mike, saying he was the first reason she smiled in a long time, that she had a constant happy glow when they were together. Nadja's loved ones followed her fairy tale romance on social media. The couple and Payton explored nature together, had fun at rodeo, to baseball games, and no matter what happened, they had fun. It was clear to everyone that Nadja's new romance was blossoming. She made sweet posts like, "I went to Cheap Trick, Joan Jett, and Heart tonight thanks to my always thoughtful boyfriend, Mike. Amazing day at the fair with my little family. Love you guys." After an impromptu trip to Yellowstone, she wrote, "Because my boyfriend is amazing. I love you, Mike."
Hi everybody, it's me Payton. I am going to be like every YouTuber ever, and I'm going to make a vlog. We're going to Yellowstone right now, and how much longer do we have? Like 4 hours? Okay, yeah, 4 more hours. And yeah, it's a really pretty drive though. I'm happy.
Nadja asked Mike 2 or 3 times for help paying the mortgage. After being asked a few times, Mike firmly refused, saying they were moving too fast and he couldn't do that. But Nadja wasn't buying it. She had seen one of his paychecks, which supposedly showed that Mike was making $10,000 in a single month. Nadja knew that Mike made a lot of money as a pilot and didn't understand why he wasn't willing to help her financially. This heated dispute became a point of contention and ended up leading to a brief separation of the couple. However, their love was like a magnet, drawing them back to each other in no time. Nadja texted her friend. He told me that the separation was not making him feel better. We really have a hard time separating at this point. Perhaps the hardest part of their relationship to manage was the frequent distance between Nadja and Mike. After all, Mike's job often took him away from home for a considerable amount of time, sometimes for weeks on end, which can definitely put some strain on a relationship. In fact, this only made Mike realize that he couldn't stand to spend so much time away from Nadja and Payton. This casual relationship needed to be more permanent. So Mike ended up buying a ranch in Caldwell, Idaho, and told Nadja that he simply couldn't let her think he wasn't ready for commitment. He invited her and Payton to live with him and promised them everything they wanted: open fields, horses, dogs, rabbits, anything to make them happy and allow them to live a full life with him. Nadja's status updates captured her growing excitement, as this housing arrangement went from a tentative idea to a concrete plan. Nadja, Payton, and Mike were ecstatic to start their new life together. In fact, Nadja was so excited that she started dedicating all her time to decorating the ranch. Never in her life had she had so much space to work with, and she was more than ready to turn the farm into a proper home for her and her 2 favorite people. She started putting fences around the yard and building pens, chicken coops, rabbit runs. On May 10th, she shared this video of the expansive property, and it wasn't hard to tell that she had completely fallen in love with the land. Notice the shed she pointed out in the background.
Well, folks, here's my new backyard. Kind of liking this just a little bit. Still a little bit of fence to build here. Dogs are the only thing that's grazing now, but that will change. This is where the chickens live. Hay shed. Can't even see the house because of all the trees. Yeah, baby. We're loving it.
Both Nadja and Mike felt that they had finally found the person of their lives. This was a new beginning unlike any other. It seemed too good to be true. And unfortunately, it was. In June 2017, Nadja needed to make a trip back to Utah to pick up some of the horses that Mike had bought for the ranch. Mike himself couldn't pick them up because he had to work and wouldn't be around. So Nadja offered to do it, except on the weekend of June 9, when she was supposed to arrive at the horse pickup location. Nadja never showed up. The worker she was supposed to meet decided to call her just to check. Maybe it was just a simple misunderstanding, or maybe it was much more than that. When Nadja never answered the phone and never returned any calls, it became clear that something was very, very wrong. Friends of Nadja and Payton's family began to experience the same thing on their side, noting that they hadn't even heard from Payton since June 6, which was the last time she texted them. Payton's friend Sydney began to grow more worried each day. Both she and Payton were completely addicted to their phones. There was no plausible reason for Payton not to respond to a text message or a call for so long. When no one could get in touch with Mike either, it seemed like the whole family had simply vanished into thin air. So, Sydney convinced her mother to intervene and investigate what was happening with Payton and her family. Together, the two called 911 and sent someone to Nadja and Mike's property to check and see if everything was okay. Mike's worried relatives also called to request a welfare check. The officers were able to retrieve dental records to identify the mysterious third body. It was a woman, and her name was Cheryl Baker. She is also a local resident of Ogden, Utah, But although Cheryl was from the area, she practically had no connection with Nadja and Payton while she was alive. So, why was her body among theirs on the farm property? Well, as I said, Cheryl had no connection with Nadja and Payton. However, she did have a connection with Mike. Mike's real name is Gerald Michael Bullinger, and Cheryl Baker was his wife for a full 7 years until her sudden death. Cheryl and Gerald were married for 5 whole years before Gerald started dating Nadja. Not only was Gerald cheating on Cheryl by starting a whole new family with Nadja, but the mistress and her daughter lived in Ogden, were only 8 miles from where Gerald lived with his wife all the time. Of course, that's why it was so easy for Gerald to lead a double life. He could easily move between his 2 partners without raising any suspicion. However, Nadja's best friend later admitted that she always found it strange that, despite the proximity of their homes, Nadja didn't seem to spend many nights with her boyfriend. She remembers Nadja staying with Gerald only once, but she thought the man was just getting used to things, as he said this was his first relationship in 10 years. He literally couldn't get proper financing to actually buy the ranch to which he moved with Nadja and Payton. So he had Cheryl buy the property for him, telling her it would become their retirement home. Cheryl bought it completely on her own. While Nadja was sharing excited posts about moving to the idyllic rural land, Cheryl was also excited with co-workers about how she just couldn't wait to spend her retirement in the beautiful countryside with the man she loved. So, it's no surprise that Cheryl wanted to see the property for herself in June 2017. She had just retired as a teacher on June 6, after spending many years working in schools for the deaf and blind. Although she agreed to stay behind and sell her house in Utah, while he was supposed to live alone in a trailer on the Idaho property and fix it up nicely for her, she suddenly decided to drive 5 hours to where the property is located. Excited to pleasantly surprise her husband with an unexpected visit, Cheryl saw that there was no reason not to meet up with her husband for a while since she was unemployed. Upon arrival, she was perplexed to discover that substantial progress was being made on the property and confused to see a fully functional house with a car parked in the garage and animals running around. This was her property, and she certainly wasn't working on it. She probably thought that Gerald was doing some construction and renovation for the 2 of them as a kind of surprise. Perhaps Cheryl got out of the car and walked up to the garage entrance, interested in seeing who was inside the house and what they were doing on her property without her consent. When Nadja opened the door, Cheryl's new suspicions were only confirmed when Nadja asked who Cheryl was, and the 2 realized they were being deceived by the same man. Both were frustrated with themselves and each other, but mostly with Gerald. Gerald became aggressive and very violent, venting his anger at being found out. Gerald murdered the 3 women, Cheryl, Nadja, and Payton. The 3 horrific bodies on the property. They were tragically identified as belonging to Nadja Medley, her innocent daughter Payton, and Gerald's 56-year-old wife Cheryl Baker. When the victims' bodies were analyzed, it was clear that all 3 had been shot in the head execution style before their bodies were discarded in the shed on Gerald's property. In addition, while some of the animals on the property were alive and running around, like a snake and some rabbits, several animals, presumably family pets, were found dead, including some birds and 3 dogs, which, like the human victims, were shot execution style. All the details of how this happened are unknown to almost everyone, except Gerald himself. But he is nowhere to be found. All of Nadja's relatives remember Gerald as a supportive husband who made time to spend holidays with his in-laws and go on outdoor adventures with the family. In fact, they believe that Cheryl thought her marriage was absolutely perfect. Just thinking that Gerald was such a good liar that he could convincingly maintain the charade for so long is mind-blowing. Gerald's plan was that he would keep his 2 lives separate, but promising both his partners a new life in the same house was obviously a ticking time bomb. Both of his mistresses were fine with him being away for weeks because of his occupation. But as he had to spend quality time with both sides, perhaps putting in real flight hours was low on his list of priorities. Many people theorize that Gerald may have hoped to start a polygamous marriage where his relationships could merge seamlessly into a family. Some information came from Gerald's first wife, a woman named Jackie Garcia, whom he met in the 1970s when they were both freshmen at what is now Brigham Young University, Idaho. He supposedly served his mission in Manila and then married Jackie in the LDS temple in Salt Lake City. But from the beginning, Jackie says she had a bad feeling about her fiancé, saying she knew it was a mistake as soon as she returned from her honeymoon. She said his deceptive ways were so extreme that you could catch him red-handed, God could be pointing at him, and he would still lie through his teeth. The first time she saw the darkness hidden within her husband was during their first year of marriage. They were arguing and she found herself on the floor while Gerald hovered menacingly over her. Jackie says he would hit her once during arguments and she would stop talking. It got to the point where she was very much afraid for her life. Still, she tried to make it work, asking for help from the church and loved ones. But, to her dismay, Gerald was so good at putting on a friendly mask to the outside world that no one really believed her story. Their marriage ended in 1988, after years of infidelity on Gerald's part, and he quickly started a relationship with a woman who would become his second wife. This mistress would have been Cheryl Baker, his third wife, but as everyone who knew her attests to how pure and genuine Cheryl's heart was. Interestingly, the last text message a friend received from Cheryl around the time she would be going to the Idaho property said, "Take care of my dog." At first, this wasn't very concerning, as the recipient of the message just assumed that Cheryl had decided to go on a backpacking trip with Gerald. But again, many raised the question, how do we know that Cheryl is even the person who sent that message? Would her husband have used her phone to send it after her death? CBS reported that the message was sent around June 11, and authorities believe the crime occurred on the 8th or 9th. So, with that in mind, perhaps Gerald was really behind the strange message. Authorities believe that Gerald Bullinger had a big head start before anyone even noticed that Nadja, Payton, or Cheryl were missing. In fact, Gerald had a full 10 days to start his life on the run before anyone was even looking for him, and to use that to his advantage. According to investigators, Gerald actually spent the first 24 hours in Idaho after the death of Nadja, Payton, and Cheryl. And indeed, a neighbor told reporters that she actually heard screams near the property in the middle of the night, around the time the murders would have occurred, but she didn't call the police because she wasn't sure if it was an animal or a woman, and figured that a neighbor who lived closer to the farm would report the strange activity if it was really serious. In addition, other neighbors actually reported hearing gunshots around the time of the crime. But again, this wasn't really a big deal. The rural area was full of hunters and target shooters. I mean, we even saw that Gerald taught Payton to shoot.
Can't even see the house because of all the trees.
However, by the way the victims died, it seems that there wasn't much of a struggle that could alert anyone in the first place. It is believed that Nadja, Payton, and Cheryl all died from a single gunshot to the head. Gerald had the time and control to carry out a cold and calculated execution. How did they all die from such clean and precise gunshot wounds? Some theorized a scenario where Gerald was already at home on the farm with Nadja and Payton when he suddenly saw Cheryl's car pulling into the driveway. Knowing that the game was up and that he couldn't face all three at once, perhaps he decided to eliminate Nadja and Payton first, then waited at the door to surprise his defenseless wife with a sudden attack. Some suggested that Gerald could have shot Nadja and Payton while they were sleeping. I suppose that would make sense if Cheryl had arrived at the property late at night, and maybe that would explain the scream the neighbor heard. But in the end, we really don't know these details for sure. Investigators say that on the morning of June 10, Gerald casually went to have breakfast in the next town in Nampa, Idaho. It seems he wasn't in a hurry to flee, and he wasn't afraid to show his face in public. After enjoying his morning meal, Gerald was heading back to Utah. Once back in Utah, Gerald swapped his truck for Cheryl's car that was undergoing maintenance. In an effort to throw off investigators, and finally on June 11, Gerald was seen on video entering the Bridger-Teton National Forest in Wyoming, which is Gerald's last known location, as it was the last time the police were able to track him. After some searching, authorities were able to locate Cheryl's car at an abandoned campsite, but Gerald was nowhere to be found. At least the investigators think he wasn't. There are several theories about Gerald's current whereabouts. Among the most popular are the fact that he could easily have hitched a ride to get out of the national forest, and perhaps even out of Wyoming. However, some people also theorize that Gerald could have just continued his way through the forest and taken his own life out of guilt. Canyon County Sheriff Kieran Donahue even said several times that his instincts lead him to believe that Gerald is dead. But whether this would be due to intentional self-harm or just exposure to the elements is a matter of debate. These online theorists point out that if he wanted to end his own life, he probably would have done so in the heat of the moment right after the crime, rather than fleeing the area. Close friends of Nadja believe that Gerald is too self-centered to end his own life. An anonymous individual who knew Gerald for over a decade joked, "If you know about sociopaths, you know they hardly ever kill themselves. He would have to feel guilty, and he has no conscience." It can be said that he exhibited sociopathic behavior in many aspects of his life. Even Cheryl's friends said that the eventual husband and wife met on a plane, and when they landed, he had already gotten her phone number. So, there must have been something infectious about his personality. Too bad he used it to manipulate those who trusted him the most. The sheriff said that the evidence points to him still being in the country, probably in the West, if he is indeed still alive. But here's where things get even crazier. On July 29 days after Gerald entered the Bridger-Teton National Forest, a couple of workers from a recreation center reported seeing someone who looked exactly like Gerald in a tent at a campsite less than 2 hours from where his car was found. On June 28, a tip was received from someone who thought they saw Gerald driving south on Interstate 15, near Salt Lake City, while others reported possible sightings of the fugitive in Pocatello. Police dogs, helicopters, and infrared technology were all employed in the expansive and intensive search for the loose murder suspect. But all in vain. One of the scariest things about this case is that Nadja's Facebook page was not taken down. And so we can still read her final posts. They are like a time capsule showing a woman who is happy, optimistic, and totally in love with her boyfriend, excited for the future. In her last post, she says that the last thing she thinks about before going to bed is that life is good and affirms that she has found love. About a year before the murders, she posted a picture of Mike and Payton writing, "Happy Father's Day to all the real dads out there, those who inspire their children, who are there for their families, who take time to make a difference." It is truly tragic to see how much she has already had to go through. And yet, she had no idea of the monster that her boyfriend Mike really was.
Hello everybody, it's me, Payton, and I am back for another new video with my mom.
Hi.
So, today I'm going to be painting her face Galaxy. Comment down below what type of video I should be making next. I have a very one...
Please don't say paint your mom.
Just paint your mom all over. Oh god.
Yeah.
I
Not on YouTube, you won't.
Her last video shows Payton sharing her New Year's resolutions for 2017, having no idea that her life would be cut short far too soon.
I don't know, have my own opinion more, be able to say stuff more. Like, if I don't want to do something, say no, I'm not going to do that. And with standing up for myself also, being able to tell people when something's like hurting me and getting them to stop. God, I need to focus. Fourth thing is, I want to do more writing, because as I doubt any of you guys know, I love to write. I have stuff published in my school's book. That's really good. I might read it to you guys. Because it's like kind of a way to express something I love to do. Like, I love to sing, and that's what I do on that channel. I love to, like, write my own songs. Like, I just learned how to play guitar, so hopefully, like, I'm not great, but I can do stuff. And so hopefully I'll be able to do that more. But it's just, altogether, just doing things that'll make me happier. Do things that'll make you happier. Like, don't just sit here saying, you know what, I'm gonna do that, and it'll be great. No, do something, actually do it. Do something that will make you happy. Do something that will impact your life for the better. If that's getting rid of some of the friends that treat you like complete, then get them out. Get rid of them. If you want to go talk to that hot guy at your school that you've had a crush on forever, do it. Don't just wait for the right moment, because guess what? There will never be a right moment. We don't have enough time in this world to just keep waiting for the right moment, because eventually we'll just give up. What we wanted to do won't seem important, we'll lose the interest, and we'll just live our lives not knowing, that we did that. We'll just live our lives in the what ifs, and that's not okay. You need to put yourself out there, because we have one short life, and no matter what you believe happens afterwards, we have one life, and you need to live it the way you want to, doing whatever you want to do, not what other people want you to do. Live your life the way that it makes you happy. But just listen to me. It's more important to live in the now and live like we're gonna die tomorrow than live like we have 20 years ahead of us, or however.
Gerald Bullinger is indeed the only person of interest in the murder of Nadja, Payton, and Cheryl, and needs to be located, dead or alive, as soon as possible. At this very moment in 2021, Gerald Bullinger is still considered armed and dangerous, and is highly sought after. Cheryl's brother lamented, "I no longer trust my own judgment about people. I thought Mike was a nice guy." I'm not sure we would know the true story even if Mike were found.